Hello, hello. Happy Sunday. So happy to see everybody. How is everyone doing? Let me know where you're coming in from, what you're drinking. I just had a small glass of sake with dinner, and I forgot I had set this live because it's been one of those days. And I am a complete lightweight. I have about
I just had
oh
black.
that is this is why you need to have your YouTube off on your phone. I'm super happy to see everyone. It is I'm just super happy, I am actually having one of the toughest times in my life right now, but I realized today we get to decide how we want to react to things. And I thought I would sit together with my family. You guys are now my family, so I am so grateful to have you all. Some of you might know, I just hit 20,000, and my camera's about to die. I'm just seeing that right now. Oh my gosh, you guys. Um, it's not a Tyler live without something going wrong. Hold on one sec. I just have to plug it in. I'm very sorry. I swear when I get more professional, this is not going to happen. Is it charging? It's not charging. Oh. Okay. This cord is not working. I'm so sorry. For those of you who are new, I do try to keep it interesting and fun. Usually something will blow up or my heater will blow a fuse. I'm very sorry. I promise. Maybe when I hit 100,000, this won't happen anymore. Oh, it's charging. Amazing. It's so real, you guys. The struggle is so real. What you guys don't realize is when I'm doing my videos, I can pause. My editor can, oh, see, it's not focused. Hold on one second. We are professionals. Yes. But Emily has that really cute, flying star thing. And I do not, unfortunately. I love Emily though. For those of you who are Emily fans, I am a big Emily fan. I am going to wait. It's going to focus. I promise. Emily has like several more years on me. I just started my channel just a few months ago. That's why hitting 20,000 is such a dream come true for me. I really would like my camera to focus. It's going to happen. Bear with me. We are professionals here. I wanted to sit together and talk about the Gwyneth Paltrow trial. I might even make this live private after this. This will just be a hangout between us, okay? But it's gonna happen. I think it's gonna focus because I would really like it to focus on my face. What if we did this? Oh, maybe we can do that. All right, that's gonna happen. So, for those of you who have been following me doing the live and the Gwyneth Paltrow trial, I wanted to sit together today and talk about it because I'm really happy for her that the verdict came out the way it did. And for those of you who were following trial, let me know in the comments like who was following the trial. It was funny because nobody was covering this trial. I covered it the night before it started because being an attorney in Hollywood, I was very focused. I have an alert for Hollywood lawsuits, and this came up just a few days before, though. Like, no one seemed to know that this trial was happening. And I thought, wait, why is no one covering this? And I looked for Emily and I realized that she wasn't covering it. And I was like, you know what? I cover Hollywood news, so I'm going to cover this. And I'm still out of focus, right? You guys, So I thought, okay, we're going to cover it. And then I think Emily started watching it the second half of the first day. And I have been following it, and I am so proud of her for not settling, because weren't you guys all thinking that was the first question that came into my mind? Why didn't she just settle, right? At first, it sounded like it was a $300,000 negligence claim. Honestly, I don't know if you guys know, but lawyers are expensive. We might not get paid that much, but we're billed out for a lot. When I used to be at a firm, I think I was billed out at like $1,000 an hour. And was not getting paid $1,000 an hour, by the way. But I would hazard to guess that her lawyer fees are probably in the $1 million. So we will find out when the judge has his hearing about the attorney's fees, how much it's going to be. But I think a lot of people are guesstimating that it's going to be probably $1 million. And I would not be surprised. I mean, I have someone who's very close to me in my life who is going through a litigation, and just going through a small round of depositions came out to like $60,000. It's been crazy. So I was following it. I was giving you guys live streams most nights until I got sick. I'm sorry, I kind of sound like a duck right now, and I do have a small little cough drop in my throat right now, in my mouth, because I have been coughing. But her verdict came out, and I would love for you guys to drop in the chat what you guys thought the verdict was going to be. Pretty much from the day Gwyneth testified, which I think was the second day, maybe the third, wait, hold on. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, fourth day. I'm sorry. The fourth day of plaintiff's case, they called Gwyneth the Friday, not this past week, but the Friday before. As soon as I heard her testimony, I thought that it would go her way, because she just sounded very honest to me. And here's the thing, when someone is speaking the truth, right? When they speak the truth, their story stays consistent. Like, her story never wavered and never changed. She included the fact that she was really pissed off that someone ran into her. At first, she thought it was an assault. I know some of the people, in the live streams have been very harsh, against her, saying, oh my God, how could she call this an assault? But you have to realize that she is a top level actress who has had stalkers throughout the years. I mean, she had one stalker for 10 years that she had to testify against in 2017, right? So this is somebody who is constantly having to be aware of their surroundings. Everybody always tries to give them space so that they are not harassed, because you have to realize that they are followed by the paparazzi all the time. I live in LA. I happen to live in an area where, there are some celebrities, and, their kids, schools have paparazzis outside, and it's incredibly intrusive. I think the plaintiff's lawyer, what's her name, Kristen something, she said after the verdict, right, when she was talking to the press, she says, I have so much sympathy for, she was a big Gwyneth Paltrow fan. I think she was like, I have so much sympathy for her, because if this is what she has to go through, because she felt a small sliver of it, that it was incredibly awful, right, to be in the limelight like that. And remember, Gwyneth Paltrow was in the courtroom every day for those 8 days. She sat there for every minute. And you know who wasn't sitting in the courtroom every day? Terry Sanderson, the plaintiff who brought this case. So sorry. who made the jury sit there for 8 days, yet he was not there, right? And I think for me, hearing the defense experts, especially Dr. Schur, remember the guy, the biomechanic engineer who did all those drawings? They were fantastic. And he was so smart, and he was a snow sport expert. And he just said the accident couldn't have happened the way it did, right? And then for me, it was when Owens had his, brought Sanderson back, and they talked about his, I don't know. Did you guys lose count? I can't. How many trips did Sanderson go on in the last 7 years, right? He climbed Machu Picchu. He went to Morocco. He went to the Netherlands 4 times. He went to so many countries in Europe. He went to Thailand. He went to, I believe he said he scuba dove 4 times. Here's the thing. When you have severe brain injury, as he said he did, traveling long flights and scuba diving is incredibly hard on normal people, right? So the fact that he did it with severe brain injury, I mean, I think that for me just, it very clearly showed that this was not a man who was sitting at home staring at a wall, broken over the loss of the life he used to have, right? You guys, I felt kind of like sorry for myself. I was thinking, wow, I have a boring life compared to him, and I'm an attorney in Hollywood, and my life is pretty exciting most of the time. So it was just, I think that did it for me. And when the verdict came back, I said, wow. For me, justice prevailed, right? So tonight, I thought what we would do is listen to the closings, and then maybe even go to Owen's direct of Sanderson that very last time about his trips, right? And what you guys have to realize is these photos all came from Terry Sanderson's Facebook, right? I think the lesson we've all learned here from Alec Murdaugh's case with the cell phones and this one with Terry Sanderson is once you want to have a dispute about anything, please do not post on social media, especially if you're claiming some type of severe injury that should normally, you know, hinder your ability to go on these very strenuous trips, right? So hold on one second. I'm going to try to see if I can catch some of your comments here. I promise at some point I'm going to get a moderator because my lives, you guys are being so supportive and coming to hang out with me more and more. Let's see. There were some great questions coming in. Hello, Rachel from Alaska. Thank you so much. The 20,000 has been whiteness. It's been really, really just such a dream come true. I mean, I went to Berkeley to be an English major. I mean, I was an English major. I wanted to be a novelist, and I went to law school to take care of my family. Firefly. Yes, we are all big James fans. He's the Gwyneth's lawyer who everyone called Clark Kent because not only was he easy on the eyes, but he was the only lawyer, I swear, out of all of them who seemed incredibly professional, wasn't like hacking up a lung, wasn't incredibly condescending and annoying like Owens was. But you know what? Owens kind of grew on me, and then he was actually quite effective. Hi, AJ, welcome. This whole YouTube universe and the different lawyers that are on there, I am in such esteemed I have such esteemed colleagues, right? They're just amazing. They bring something different. Everybody brings something different to the table. Emily used to be a DA in LA. A lot of people, I believe, on YouTube are trial attorneys, either criminal or civil. Somebody asked me, I think Firefly asked me if I go to trial. I actually am not a trial attorney. I'm a transactional attorney. I started out as a litigator going to court, but I switched over to transactional law, working for studios like Disney and Skydance and BuzzFeed and other production companies. Let's see. Yes, I watch Emily's channel, Victor, during the day, and I in between when I'm working, I will take a break, and I will, between drafting or negotiating deals, I will go catch Emily's lives. And I was hooked, right when I watched the opening, that was just like a train wreck. I mean, come on, it was a train wreck, you guys. I was like, oh my goodness, like these attorneys are not great. And I'm always very sympathetic and empathetic, and I think, and I remind myself, these are civil attorneys whose cases usually settle, right? 95% of civil cases settle, and we usually go to settlement conferences, and this is what I did in my first few years as a litigator. It's not exciting at all. We rarely get to go to court. Agree, settle for far less than legal fees, keep it out. See, that was the thing. When I first heard about this, I wondered, why didn't Gwyneth Paltrow just settle? And as it came out, I think there were a couple of things happening, right? She said she thought settling would compromise her integrity. I don't know if you guys caught that Instagram story that she released right after the verdict. And I think what people don't realize is when you settle, you're basically admitting fault, right? You're admitting that you did something wrong and you're settling. And this is why Alec Baldwin, I believe, has not taken a plea bargain, because he would have to admit that he was at fault for killing Helena Hutchins, which is such a tragedy. We'll cover the prelim hearing in May when that starts. But Gwyneth Paltrow basically decided that I'm not going to go silent because I didn't do anything wrong. I also don't want to be portrayed as someone who's so entitled or out of touch with reality that I would mow down a old man, leave him unconscious, and just bolt away, which was their original case, right? It was like a hit and run, which the judge dismissed. $1 million plus in legal fees, I would not doubt it. $1,000 per hour is excessive. I've worked at big law firms where the partners they build out even more than that. I've worked at big law firms. So, Victor, you're saying you thought it would be 50-50 or Gwyneth Paltrow for $1, didn't believe a friend would leave a person face down in the snow without checking. Yes. See, here's the thing, right? So Ramon states that the only eyewitness, right, stated that Terry Sanderson was unconscious for 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 8 minutes, 10 minutes. We've heard all these variations, right? I wish they would have done it, like let 2 minutes run out. 2 minutes is a long time for someone to be face down in the snow unconscious, right? I think if Terry Sanderson was really out cold for 2 minutes, people around would have noticed that there was a person laying in the snow unconscious. Deer Valley is a snow resort. It's very high end. I'm sure they have very, very strict lawyers, and the company probably drills it into their instructors and their employees that if anybody has any signs of a head injury or unconsciousness, especially after Natasha Richardson, who is Liam Neeson's wife, remember, she had a head injury after skiing and died. everyone is really much more sensitive and alerted to that fact. I don't think that they would have left him unconscious and not attended to him. They would have called for an ambulance if he was really unconscious for 2 minutes. You're right, Albert. When her lawyers showed the plaintiffs that vacation reel is insane, right? And the fact that he put it up on his own Facebook page, I mean, I think Terry Sanderson has traveled more in the last 7 years than several people with their whole lives combined, right? It was pretty crazy. Yes. So for those of you who might not remember, Gwyneth Paltrow was one of Harvey Weinstein's victims. There was a lot of history about her being, one of the victims. And there's a story about Brad Pitt, who was dating her at the time, going up to Harvey Weinstein and basically cussing him out for abusing Gwyneth. And we don't know exactly what happened. I don't think she ever shared that story, but realize that I think after being silenced as a young actress, she's now 50, right? I think she's no longer interested in being silent. And so I think that's why she said she was not going to go silent and settle and just let Terry Sanderson, basically win and put lies out into the world about her when she didn't do anything wrong. Well, I know she said, for me, I thought it was 50-50 until Terry took the stand. He was sus for me. When Gwyneth Paltrow took the stand, I totally thought she should win, right? Steeler with RSD, you said, I agree. Once I heard her sigh, I figured she wouldn't. She was also a victim, Harvey. That trauma doesn't go away. I agree. I totally agree. CM Lady, I felt Sanderson's witnesses were too coached. They tended to say the same things in the same way. Totally rang false. I agree. I felt like they were totally coached, and they just didn't feel very authentic to me. And Craig Ramone was not a reliable witness for me at all. Let's see. Firefly, when the daughter told the attorney to not correct her depo because it would cause problems, it was all over. Oh yeah, I was like, oh my goodness, I can't even believe she said that, right? Because there was this, I think it was Shay, who was a second daughter who testified, stated that there were mistakes with her depo that she wanted to correct, but then her lawyer told her, her dad's lawyer told her not to correct it because it would send a red flag. And Owens, I felt like he was going to have an aneurysm. He was like, wait, so are you telling me you gave me false testimony? And she was like, no, no, no. It's just like there was, I think, a lot of things happening behind the scenes. And remember, Terry Sanderson, I mean, I think the taller guy, Bueller, he says that he's been working with Terry for 7 years. Could you guys imagine how much his legal fees must be? I mean, it must be millions of dollars easily, I think. Probably a couple million. How does he have so much money as an optometrist? I don't know. I mean, I think they probably make pretty good living. I mean, I think if you have your own private practice, I think I saw someone's comment. Have you ever paid for glasses? I mean, I think it can add up. Cap, you said, I found it very telling that TS didn't turn up until Gwyneth Paltrow was on the stand and all the defense witnesses after. For his team to say that he couldn't take the criticism, BS. So that's right. For those of you who weren't following the trial every day, so Gwyneth Paltrow sat on, she sat every day. She was in court day in and day out, and Terry Sanderson was not. And his attorneys explained that away by saying, oh, he can't take criticism very well. He doesn't want to hear his daughters talk about how much he's changed and how different he is now. And by the way, there was testimony that he was an angry man before and impatient, just as he is now, right? I don't know that changed that much with time. But when Gwyneth Paltrow testified, he sat there, and it was weird because he sat like in a spot he wasn't sitting before, and he was like directly at her, and like it was a very, like, I got very weird feelings from him. I mean, he was like slightly creepy, like he was leering at her. As an attorney, it's my job to read people. either, face to face or over the phone. And it's my job to kind of catch tone and specific words that are used. And humans are not usually that complicated. It's your psychopath, right? Sorry. You really read and see how people are. I'm sorry. I have to cough. We'll see how long this live can go because I do have a bit of a cough still. Okay, so we're gonna go and watch the closing from both attorneys. We'll watch a little bit of it. I mean, I think combined it's probably 2 hours. But let's do that. This is not sponsored, but these are amazing. They're like hauls, teeny tiny. I've actually never had a sponsored video because I can't decide on doing any sponsorships yet. Okay. Let me see. We're going to share screen. Sorry. Can't very precisely. Okay. Here we go. So this is plaintiff
Check with
attorney,
with the expert here.
the one who coughed the entire time. So if you guys are irritated by his coughing, which I felt very sorry for him. I mean, he explains that he has asthma, but still, it's going to be hard. So you guys might want to mute if it bothers you.
Thank you for your attentiveness during these 2 weeks. It's been a hard, long case. I've tried a lot of cases in my lifetime. This has been a hard, long case. By the way, it's about an hour each way going to Salt Lake with traffic, so that adds to it. But you've been very attentive. I've seen you taking notes and paying attention. No one nodded off. So thank you again. Now, I'll turn on my, Lawrence and I are going to split this. Let's see, nope. By the way, I apologize for my cold. You can't really choose when those come. I've got asthma, and it makes it worse. But I've done everything I can to try to resolve it. Took all the tests. I'm negative for COVID, et cetera, but it still has plagued me. So I apologize for the coughing. Maybe a little bit more of that.
Oh,
okay.
The snorting,
There are really
though.
three issues in the case. Number one,
let's be kind.
who hit
We're going
whom?
to practice kindness.
Okay. Number two, did it cause any damage? Number three, what are the damages? What are the damages? Now, Gwyneth Paltrow, in this case, is not a liar. Terry Sanderson is not a liar. Okay? Gwyneth is a good person. Okay? She's a good mother, and she loves her children, and she's passionate about many things. Now, we don't usually say good things about other people in our closing, but I think that's an accurate statement. Okay? I think that she believes, and I believe Gwyneth Paltrow.
Okay. Y'all, you don't usually say this in your closing, right? That you believe the defendant. This was really wild for me that he was saying that because I was like, what is happening right now? And it made me think that maybe the plaintiff's attorney towards the end, maybe after Owens did his slideshow, his like we should name that something like his amazing trip around the world slideshow. I think maybe they're like, maybe our client isn't really telling the truth. I don't know. Let me know what you think. But he just said, I believe Gwyneth Paltrow. Okay.
And she says she believes. She says, Terry hit me in the back. And she believes it. It's a sincere belief. She's not a liar because of it. Pardon me. But the problem is, a sincere belief doesn't make it so. Now, excuse me. Some of you are skiers and some of you aren't. Okay. Pardon me. When you're involved in a ski crash, it can be very confusing. I don't care who hit whom. It can be very confusing. So I think she sincerely believes that she got hit in the back. The problem is, you have to make a decision based on the evidence that you've heard here. Okay, on the evidence. Now, let me tell you, to illustrate this, about something that happened to me about 1.5 years ago. Okay. We live in downtown Salt Lake, and we use that Costco or shop at that Costco on 17 South and 3rd West. Some of you have probably been there, or I just won the world. Okay.
We are having a hard time hearing them, but
Yeah, Mr. Six, where's the microphone for that? Is it on your chest?
Maybe it's not turned on.
Oh,
I'm picking it up, but it is just so faint in the room.
Says on.
I know, I mean, I'm picking it up just fine on for the record, but no one else can hear you.
Well, maybe put it higher on your laptop.
Is that better?
Oh, here. Hand it to me. Right, is it on? Testing? Okay. Sounds better.
Sorry about that, folks. I just got gas at Costco. It was about July of 2022. No, 2021. And I was at intersection. It's a pretty busy intersection. There are 2 lanes, north and south, 2 lanes, east and west, 2 each. And there's a left-hand turn lane. I had a red light. And I was the first one at the intersection. I had a good look at it. I looked in my rear view mirror on my left side, and there's a green arrow for each direction going east and west, turning south and turning north. You understand that? So I'm waiting to have a red light. And there's a lady across the way from me, car heading west but turning south. She had a green arrow, like I saw one heading north. I looked in my mirror, and here comes a guy at about 40, 45 miles an hour on the inside lane of 17 South. I said, my goodness, he's going to hit that woman. He's making that turn. And sure enough, smacked her and smacked her hard. Okay? Didn't slow down at all. Well, I had a good view of it, and the car spun around, but I was able to get by. There's a Maverick on the southeast corner of the intersection. Okay. I pulled in there, ran to her car, and asked her, are you okay? Like everybody does. She said, yeah, I think so. I didn't think she was, looking at her. But she said she was okay. Okay? So I ran over to the other guy. I was the first one there. Some people were beginning to stop. And the guy that ran the red light said, are you okay? He said, yeah, I think so. I said, well, why'd you run the red light? You know what his answer was? I didn't. It was green. Well, I wasn't going to sit there and argue with a guy like that under those circumstances, but he said it was green. So when the police came a couple minutes later, And you got to be careful as an attorney. I gave them my card, not to get the case. You know, you can't do that, be unethical, but let people know who I was so they could call me. Get a card, and I gave each of the persons a card. And about several months later, I started getting calls from insurance adjusters wanting me to tell them what happened. And I tell you that story because so often people that are in these types of events have a totally different viewpoint. So we don't hold anything against Gwyneth for her viewpoint. It's sincerely expressed, but she's wrong based on the evidence, okay? And Terry's correct. Now, what's the evidence that Gwyneth hit Terry? Okay.
Okay, so I wanted to pause that because somebody said the Costco story as well. It made no sense. Here's the thing that I've said about attorneys, right? Attorneys have to be good storytellers. How many of you watched the Depp v. Heard trial and watched the closing there, right? Or just overall, right? Camille Vasquez was an excellent storyteller. And you should be able to read the jury. And I think if I was there reading the jury right now, I would imagine that he was not connecting with him. But I bet you that he was not even really reading their faces. Because unfortunately, there are a lot of attorneys who are very ego-driven and they want to present their case the way they think it should be presented, right? They don't really think about what is the best for my client or what is the best way to connect with somebody. And I think that's what happened here, right? And that he was trying to make a point, but somebody said in one of the comments that this sounds like something that maybe the defense would share versus what the plaintiff would share. And somebody asked, I think Firefly, you asked, why did they bring in Kristen, the defense lawyer, right? Because she said at the end that she actually is always a defense attorney and never the plaintiff side. And she shared later on that she was brought in because Gwyneth filed a counterclaim. So she was there to defend that portion of it. And that's why she was brought in. So that's why. And somebody asked earlier if I heard any of the juror interviews, and I did, which was fascinating. If I can find it, we can watch it because it's one of the jurors who was a nurse, and she actually gave a very kind interview for both sides. So I'll see if we can find that. And let's keep going on Bob's closing.
Number one, and there's no particular order on this, but Terry's a strong skier, advanced intermediate. Mr. Christensen said he saw him going down the hill doing wide radius turns. That's side to side, all the way, back and forth. Now, on a beginner's run, that's highly unlikely for an advanced skier. You don't do that. You don't do that. There's too many people. And so that doesn't make sense. Number two, I'll call it the scream heard around the world. Okay. This is being broadcast everywhere, by the way. It's on court TV. I'm getting emails every day from Canada, Great Britain.
We know, Bob, your cough is famous around the world.
There's a loud scream. Terry heard it. Loud scream. Craig Ramone heard it and looked over. Several other people heard it. Carrie Oakes said she heard it. Peter Christensen heard it, so caused him to look over. It's before the impact. And you don't, if you're the downhill skier, like Gwyneth claimed she was, you don't scream at something you can't see. You don't. It's the uphill skier that's going to make that scream. And that was Gwyneth Paltrow. Distraction. Everybody here probably been a parent. Most of you, not some of you maybe. But I've had my kids up there, and they want me to watch them ski. And mommy wants to ski. Now, Carrie Oakes said that, and that the deposition segment that you read said that 3 times. Okay, 3 times. And that's important. Can we show Gwyneth's deposition up here?
Your Honor, what are we talking about here?
Mr. Sykes, is this deposition testimony that was read into court?
Yes. Exactly.
And is it only deposition testimony? that was-
Yeah.
Okay.
Deposition, meaning trial testimony?
Well, it was read into court.
May we approach, Your Honor?
Sure.
I'm going to fast forward a little bit here. There's a lot of sidebars in this trial.
To someone who's moving and shooshing back and forth, it's just another unbelievable claim. That can't happen. Now, and then Gwyneth skis away to lunch. The only way that Terry Sanderson knew that this is Gwyneth Paltrow is Christensen got angry and said, "Your buddy just took out Gwyneth Paltrow," which is an odd comment to make. Like, just took out a person, you know, but he had to put in Gwyneth Paltrow. That's the only way we know that. That's why you're here. Now, causation.
Verity, you can have objections in sidebars. It's really kind of rude to do it, but it is okay. I mean, I think Owens was worried about them bringing in something that wasn't introduced in trial, and that I think that's why they objected. And they did try to do some weird, shady stuff throughout the trial. So Owens is actually a great attorney. He just is kind of annoying because he's condescending, but I actually think that he was a really good attorney and he was fast on his objections. Some of them were just annoying though. They were kind of whiny. I think he got that reputation.
Did this event cause an injury? Well, I've already mentioned this. It's very hard to do for a country boy like me.
Oh my God, the country boy, you guys, the country boy. He has said that he's this simple country lawyer, right? Wait until he gets to his milking cow story. You guys, he has the best or worst stories. I don't know how to decide.
I grew up in the city, but
Grew up in the city.
I was able to squeeze out a little bit of milk. You know, he gave me some. Take home. Glenn Brown's a great guy. But I asked him about this situation. I said, "How do you do all this?" He showed me this very sophisticated situation that milks cows automatically. Does it automatically. He says, "Without this, Bob, I could never make it. Couldn't do it. Can't get enough people to come help me do it by hand, like my grandpa did." That's executive function. That's what it does for us. We're able to do a lot of things in life. And that milking mechanism was executive function for Glenn Brown's farm to produce milk. Now,
That is a terrible story. Seriously, how many of you connected with the fact that a machine that is milking cows is the same as executive functioning. I thought maybe he was talking about like him milking the cow was an executive function. It just made no sense. It just was a terrible waste of time. Let me know what you guys think in the chat.
This is one of Terry's saddest problems, his loss of executive function. Okay. He cannot organize and manipulate his life to do things like he used to do. It's the saddest thing. And that's why part of him is still up there on that mountain. Thank you. Lawrence? That's my signal. Sit down.
They repeat this a lot, that Terry Sanderson was left up on the hill.
A few more comments for you when he's done.
Or maybe in Machu Picchu.
Still, good morning. Good morning, everyone.
Mr. Keeler, I don't know if we're picking you up yet.
Okay. Can I try this? See if it works on me? Sure. Really have my hands free. Just do a testing.
Let me fast forward because I actually want to get to Owens and Clark Kent.
Just before we started so I have to think about this one a little bit, but let's think about it together.
Look at Gwyneth's face. Oh, actually, this was good. This is what you're
What percent of
supposed to
fault do you assign?
So this is what you're supposed to, hold on. This is what you're supposed to do as a good attorney is you go through the form with the jury and you fill it out the way you want them to fill out. Now, he should have filled it out beforehand, but I think they were working with some time constraints because the judge didn't approve these instructions until like the very last minute.
To Gwyneth Paltrow, if your answer to either 1 or 2 is no, then enter 0. Well, both are yes. So we have to, because Terry Sanderson did not cause this crash. You can't cause a crash when you're hit from behind. What percent of fault do you assign to Terry Sanderson? Well, it has to add up to 100. So you have to put in 0 there. If Terry Sanderson's fault is less than 50%, answer question 8. It's not about celebrity. It's not about that.
Oh,
Yeah,
I want to get to his math.
I said, well,
This
Terry,
is-
could you?
So this part is actually, so his duty here is to talk about damages, and this is how they come up with the 3.267 number. It's fascinating.
If you could turn the earth backwards like Superman, go back in time, and how much would Terry take to not have what he has now? And he says, I'd rather go back in time and never have this. So how do we calculate this? Well, I'm going to suggest a number. And this is just a suggestion that we do it with 16 hours a day. About the formulas, Dr. Bain and Dr. Scher gave you a lot of formulas, but hopefully these will be simple or simpler than all those. So that's 16 hours a day. Times 365 days a year. Then the next question is the years. Well, it's been 7 years since the crash. Terry's likely to live another 10 years. Probably, we hope longer, much longer. He wants to live at 130. But, at least 10 years. So 7 years since the crash, 10 years, that's 17 years. So we're going to times the next number, 17. Then the question is, how much is, not the price, there's no price that you can give for Terry's time, but what is the value that's been taken away from Terry? What is the value? I mean, there are lawyers and experts and lots of people here that are making low wages, but a lot of people are making $300, $400, $500 an hour. Well, I'm just suggesting a number, and you can put in whatever number you want. This is for the non-economic damages that Terry deals with every day. So that's the next.
So remember, these are non-economic damages such as pain and suffering and loss of enjoyment of life, because he's not making an economic request because he's retired. If he was still working, that's how you can make an economic loss of wages demand, right, for damages. And so that's why these are non-economic damages.
Next number, 16 times 365 times 17. I'm going to suggest a number. You put in the number you think is fair for Terry. The full value of the harms and losses that he's dealing with every day. I'm going to say $33. $33. And I've done the math because I told you in the opening, except for the small change at the end, a couple $100. This equation is $3,276,000 for the 17 years that Terry has to deal with this permanent brain injury. Yeah, you could say, well, it's priceless, but an old shoe that's priceless. No, this is the most valuable time of his life, and so that's the amount that I suggest you consider. So, what is this case not about?
I totally agree with you, Victor. They could have hired an expert to come talk about what that number should be. And the fact that Bueller just says, this is the number I decided to come up with, because I think what they probably did was they came up with a number that Terry Sanderson wanted, probably to refill his travel fund. Sorry, I had to throw that in. And then they just backed it out from there, right? So they came up with a number, roughly 3 million. And then they said, well, how do we make numbers up that would back into this number? That's kind of how I read it, because there's absolutely no explanation here as to why they came up with this number. LS, you asked, what's the percentage these attorneys would normally get from a case like this? It depends, right? I think maybe one of you is an attorney here. Was it Michael or yeah, Michael, are you an attorney here? You sound like an attorney. I don't know if they worked on contingency or if they worked on hourly. If I was them, I would probably work on hourly, because I would not take this on contingency, because you would have to actually believe that your client can win. Contingency means that if your client wins, then you get a certain percentage of that, right? It could be, I don't know. I've seen it 5, 10, 30, 40, 50%. It just really depends on the deal that they came up with. I just don't know. In Hollywood, talent attorneys take 5% of all of their clients' everything, right? Fixed compensation, back end, box office bonuses. That's why a lot of big stars actually moved away from the 5% talent attorneys and have gone to hourly law firms, because it actually comes out to a lot less money for them.
It's not about celebrity. It's not about that. Yeah, there are lots of indications of that, but this is about a man's life. What does the defense want to make this case about? They want to make it about Terry's multiple issues. The 69-year-old Terry that was on that hill, oh yeah, he had all sorts of medical problems, but the defense wants to make it about that. But that didn't mean, I mean, he was skiing on that hill at Deer Valley. I can't think of any place that I'd rather be skiing than Deer Valley. Maybe, backcountry Powder, but the point is he was healthy enough to ski, and now he doesn't ski. Now I'm going to tell you a quick story about the legend of King Morgan. King Morgan was the real king back in England about 1,000 years ago. Back then, the kings were the law. Someone had a dispute. A farmer knocked an eye out of his neighbor. It was eye for an eye justice. They'd take the eye out of the guy who did it. And what did the victim get? Nothing. Well, King Morgan one day said, you know what? I'm going to invite 12 of my nobles, the guys that have the littler castles. And I'm going to have them come in, and I'm going to have them listen to a case.
Knights of the Round Table?
And he heard their case. The nobles heard the case, and then they said, well, we think this should be decided this way. And the king said, yeah, you're right. And that's good. So they did it a few more times. And finally the king said, you guys decide the cases. I'm going to go off and do what kings do and hunt and fish and fight battles. Well, that's the same system that was adopted in the Magna Carta almost 1,000 years or 800 years ago. And it's the same system that was brought over by the pilgrims that we celebrate Thanksgiving for. And it's the same system in our country. And we're the only country that still has the jury system where people like you decide the cases. America is a great country. And one of the reasons it's so great is its jury system. And no other country has it. And if you want to weaken America, take away its jury system. Thank you.
Wait, that was how he closed? That was so weird. I mean, I guess what he was trying to say was to the jury, thank you so much for being here. What you're doing is so important. I so appreciate the time that you have spent sitting here and listening to my client's story. That closing could have gone like that. And I am not a trial attorney. But when you try to connect with people versus wanting to sound smart by sharing some old story, that's how different it can sound. Oh, Michael, yes, I was talking about you. You should definitely go to law school. I've just recorded my why I went to law school video, which should be coming out in the next couple of weeks. And my answer is always yes. When people ask me, should I go to law school? I always say yes. You don't necessarily have to become an attorney, but law school education is really, really an excellent one. Tam, I would tend to agree with you. All right, let's go to Owens's closing. Oh, I think they took a break. Here.
Higher. And do they?
7 minutes left.
Is that water or broth? I'm always so curious. What is she drinking? I do drink broth myself. Okay, I think bone broth is actually excellent for you. A lot of collagen. I love this judge. He was so kind and so patient. He was my favorite judge.
All right, thank you. Mr. Owens, you ready to proceed?
Thank you, yes.
just to be clear, because James is going to share the time with me,
Sure.
and is the plaintiff reserve any time for rebuttal?
They reserved 10 minutes, which I granted them.
And so do they have an hour and 10 minutes? And do we have an hour and 10 minutes?
They reserved 10 minutes, so you can proceed.
So we have 1 hour.
You can take 1 hour, and if it happens to go over because you're finishing a topic or something, that's fine.
Thank you so much. Well, folks, we didn't even know each other 2 weeks ago, and here we are. Thank you. It's a beautiful thing, I think, that we resolve disputes in our country in this way, just like Lawrence mentioned. You're plucked and really against your will, even if you had to fight it. In theory, one of these bailiffs could go arrest you and come and make you come here. So we don't do that with anything else. But why do we do it? Because it's such an important thing to resolve disputes in our country in a peaceful manner. So thank you. I'm Miss Paltrow's, and I'm going to just call her Gwyneth. I'm Gwyneth's lawyer. I'm her spokesman this week. So she sat there for 2 weeks and been a punching bag.
I muted. Sorry. It is true though. She did sit there and was a punching bag, and Terry Sanderson was not there the entire time, the same way she was. So I give her a lot of props for that. I've represented a lot of very high level actors in Hollywood, and I don't know that all of them would have sat there the whole time, or they probably would have settled, to be honest, just to not go through this circus that was displayed on an international stage.
We've blown through a lot of these cute little Post-it notes where she's sending me stuff. But I take it very seriously because she's comfortable in a lot of worlds I'm not comfortable in. But she is not comfortable in this world. It is not a nice thing for someone to throw a press conference and say, like King Kong, you knocked him out and walked away, skied away. That is not what happened. And the court has actually dismissed the idea, and that's one of your jury instructions, that this was a hit and run. That took no small amount of work, by the way. But that is what she was faced with. It takes a lot of courage, does it not, for her to sit there for 2 weeks and be pounded like a punching bag. What did she lose? Did she lose? Oh, that's too bad. You had to come in early and have a massage. No, this is what she lost. She was in love with Brad Falchuk. Dated for 2 years. They both had, very interesting, I think, 9-year-old sons and 11-year-old daughters. It's kind of cool. And they said, how are we going to get these guys together in a loving, fun time? They're very busy, where we can kind of all be together for a couple days and see if this will work, if we can blend our families together. We're going to make it relaxed. We're going to put a lot of planning. She put a lot of planning into that trip. And so here they are. It's a little delicate because anyone who's been through like trying to blend families, it's a delicate thing. So what happened? They got there. They're organized. First day of skiing. They have ski instructors. By the way, I thought it was cool. I don't know if you did. Her dad taught her to ski at Alta. And she has tender feelings about that. She's been tearful with me in describing those ski trips with her dad, because her dad died in his 50s. In fact, it was so painful, she didn't ski for a long time after that because she would miss her dad. But when her kids were of this age, and we're talking with Brad was a big skier. We didn't get to hear from him, unfortunately, lack of time. But they were going to come. Okay, let's get our kids together. So what did they lose? They lost a half day of bonding and even more, because now everyone's stressed. That was the day when they bond up going up the ski lift. They bond having hot chocolate mid-afternoon. They bond relaxed, laughing around the fire. A deep cost to my client. I told you when we first met, I wanted to concentrate on a couple things about Lady Justice here. By the way, if I didn't make it clear, you are Lady Justice. All right. Blindfold eyes. Because she's blind? No. She's smart, but she's...
Okay, I do want to talk about that. So Owens, I don't know that he's not the best storyteller, but I do think he was trying to explain, right, what she lost. Because some people were poo-pooing her, saying, well, so what if she lost, the cost of her lift tickets and the ski instructor? She's so wealthy anyway. So Owens was trying to humanize her experience, right? This was the first time Brad and her kids were getting together to know each other. It was a chance for the families to see if they could blend together. It was a special moment. And I think that was something that most humans could connect to, right? Oh, look, here are two people who are divorced, who are trying to find love again. I mean, I think that was something that was, I connected with it, right? And I could understand it. As a human being, I could imagine, oh yeah, like that's what was happening. It wasn't that she lost whatever, $900 for her ski lift and instructors. It was more that this was a special day that was stolen from her, right? And it kind of explains the dollar that she asked for, right? And you guys let me know if you agree with me, if you connected with that story. I can't stand the Lady Justice, but it's fine. Some lawyers like to talk about it.
She's not going to be distracted by chaos around her. Chaos like media, chaos like sympathy. Oh, don't we all feel bad for him? I would have liked, by the way, at least a discount on the camel ride on your request for damages, but that's another issue. The idea is, okay, we're going to focus. We're going to focus. And we've tried, and the judge has given you all these warnings. Don't be talking to people. Don't even talk to yourselves yet, because we want you focused. And that's Lady Justice. Now, I talked to you earlier about the scales of justice. This is a civil claim, meaning the preponderance of the evidence. The plaintiffs brought the lawsuit. That's why we're all here. His daughters say, isn't it terrible? These two daughters that he's brought here, his life is laid open. It's because of him. He hit her.
Yes.
He hurt her.
He brought
and he
case.
wants $3 million for it. That's not fair. The easy thing for my client would have been to write a check and be done with it. But what does that tell her kids?
Yes.
You just, it's cost of business. No, it's wrong. It's actually wrong that he hurt her and he wants money from her.
Yeah.
And that's why we're here.
I agree. That was actually a very
All right.
long
So
argument.
Back to the scales here on Lady Justice. He has the burden to tilt. Okay? Tie goes to her. Now she has a $1 counterclaim. My wife said, don't waive the dollar, and I'm not waiving the dollar.
This was funny. His wife was like, do not waive the dollar.
A dead even tie means neither get anything. And I'll walk you through that in just a minute. But let me suggest it's not even close. Let me suggest it's like this, the evidence here versus here. And let me talk to you about that. Let me mention a couple other jury instructions. So I talked to you about no sympathy, passion, or prejudice. We don't want you making decisions on that basis.
That's smart.
I talked to you about the burden of proof. That is theirs. And then from today, let me talk to you about a few things. By the way, the burden of proof was evident because they get the last word. Because they have to tilt the things, you may have noticed this morning they could call a witness, and after I'm done, they can speak for a few more minutes. And that's what we do to the people who have a burden of proof. Instruction 30 that you were read today, Gwyneth Paltrow did not leave the scene of the accident without giving her contact information. Press conference 4 years ago. King Kong came out of the jungle, left me unconscious, and brushed off and went away. Utterly BS, and it's been discounted. It's not even before you. The judge took that away from you because it was so obviously false. 31 deals with spoliation. That's the GoPro issue. Spoliation is probably a word you've never heard before. It's a legal term. But the idea is if they destroy evidence, you can assume that it was bad for them. All right, so Terry, in fact, I should say Mr. Sanderson, in fact, owned a GoPro. All right. He talked to his daughter that night, 6 p.m., so about 6 hours after the collision. She got off the phone with the understanding that he had a GoPro video of the incident and typed to him, I am so glad that there's a GoPro and that you're okay. All right. No one has the GoPro, but I'm telling you this. If you find that there was a GoPro and that he said, that will not help my case, delete. If that happened, you can conclude that it was against him, that it helped us, and wouldn't it have been nice if it had been around? Do you remember when we talked 8-9 days ago? I said, you're going to hear so much stuff about damages, so much stuff. But if you find that he hit her, you can ignore it. So we heard like a week of testimony about Mr. Sanderson's brain and how he thinks. He does like to be the center of attention. He likes to be in the spotlight. His own daughter said he would be dishonest for money or notoriety. Does that make you like uncomfortable? It makes me really uncomfortable. When Dr. Gibby was up there, he said, oh, he has a great relationship with his daughters. It's like, who? He says, two daughters. There are 3 daughters. You can't just pretend this stuff away. 3 daughters. It's pretty important, isn't it, for a witness to know that he's not in the least good relationship. And why? Because she said he was abusive, and a lot of other adjectives that I'm not actually will defer to you to remember. So Miss Paltrow is asking for her dollar, but it's not about the dollar. It's not about, think of what her time is worth sitting here for 2 weeks. It's not about the money. It's about kind of ruining a very delicate time in a relationship where they're trying to get their kids together. That's what Terry Sanderson caused her. Pre-existing conditions. Oh my gosh. How do we not talk about what was going on right before and what versus what's happened after? He's 76. My parents, I'm not being flippant. They were dead by then. They certainly weren't taking 10 trips around the world. So we have to look at that. Those are the jury instructions. I do want to tell you the special verdict form that was appropriate. Can you bring that up? Lawrence walked you through it, and I don't think there's any harm in me telling you what I want. Is there? I'm going to ask you to fill this out. This is what you go to the delivery when you deliberate. These 3 pages. The last page really is nothing. So it's essentially 9 questions. And I want to show you how I want you to fill it out. I'm not trying to be subtle. All right, so was Gwyneth Paltrow at fault? No. If you answer no, go to question 3. So next page. Then you have to, that means Terry Sanderson's not going to take any money away from today. If you write no, so no on 1, you are done kind of in terms of his claim. Then you go to paragraph 3, which is our claim. Was Terry Sanderson at fault? Yes. We want you to say yes. Was his fault a cause of her harm? Again, we're asserting $1, but it was so much more. It made everyone nervous all afternoon. Was Terry Sanderson's fault a cause? Yes. And then, James, if you answer, regardless of your answer, go to 5. If your answers to question, so this is like a tax form where you have to like read it 4 times. So
This is very smart because if you've ever been on a jury, sometimes you don't know how to fill this out. So I think it's very smart that they filled it out beforehand, not like Bueller, who was like trying to do it in real time. But I know he went first. So Owens had a little more time.
sorry. If your answers to questions 1 and 3 are both no, 1 was, is Gwyneth at fault? You should not proceed any further. And you go to the end and sign it. And this is because you're trying to figure out, was she at fault? Yes or no. Was he at fault? Yes or no. Did it cause any damage? You can actually find today that neither were at fault. Skiing is an interesting thing. We strap sticks on our legs at the top of a very high hill and go down for fun. It's breathtaking. I've done it. I love it. But it has inherent risks. So the back of every ski pass you've ever seen,
This is
Judge,
true.
objection, you've excluded this inherent risk of skiing.
we referenced this, Your Honor. You said I could argue it.
It applies to resorts and not to people.
No, the argument is improper, so overruled.
So inherent risks, you've seen it on the back of every ski pass, and even your own common sense says, hey, if I don't go down this hill right, I could actually kill myself. So skiing is different. It's even different than driving. I mean, we don't drive cars down hills, right? Down icy hills, but we do ski down icy hills. The Deer Valley guy would say, we're never icy at Deer Valley. But nevertheless, it's kind of a dangerous thing. And so you can actually say no. Don't get me wrong. I want Gwyneth paid for the hardship Mr. Sanderson caused her. He hit her, he hurt her, and he's not entitled to sue her. I'm sorry, he's entitled to be here today, but he's not entitled to be rewarded for hurting her. That's not how this country works. All right, James, let's see. Then if we go, if your answers to 1 and 3 are both no, you should not proceed further. So if you found not at fault, you're done. You go to the end and your foreperson signs it. But if you keep going, otherwise continue to 6, James. I couldn't do this without James, if you can't tell. What percent of the fault
We
to
can
you
tell.
assigned to Gwyneth Paltrow? So then you have to figure out a percentage. It's possible that both people are at fault. And how this works is you take 100% pie and you find out, okay, Gwyneth's 10% at fault, Terry's 90% at fault. So a lot of things aren't just so obvious, like gray and white, black and white. We would, obviously, if you get this far, we'd want you to put 0 apportionment to her, Terry, 100%. I guess you could find that Gwyneth's entitled to 75 cents and not $1, believe it or not. Okay, then we keep going. James, whatever you can find here. What amount compensates Terry Sanders? And we just want you to go to 9 and give us our dollar. There was a little issue raised about whether her attorney's fees could be added to that. The judge has said, I'm going to deal with that. That's not in front of you.
I'm going to fast forward to the.
Stop playing church basketball after my knee injury. I'm like, I love it, but I can't do it in terms of showing you the layout. All right, how am I doing on time, folks? I want to leave James 10 or 15.
So for those of you who weren't following the trial very closely, the reason why he keeps asking how much time do I have left is he ran out of time because Owens was not super prepared as he was doing a lot of his cross. There was a lot of dead time. So they ran out of time. They only had like 56 minutes left for their closing, which is really cutting it so close. And which makes me think that he doesn't do a lot of trials. So that's why he keeps turning to James and saying, how much time is left? How much time is left? Because he wants to leave James a little bit of time. Let's see if we can get to I want to get to the animations because I actually thought they were helpful. Let's see.
And so what happened, Eric? He said they talked. So this isn't, we're not in there like trying to bully someone. Craig spoke to Terry privately. He said, Eric said, I couldn't hear it. And then, which obviously Terry at some point said he remembers Terry saying, are you okay? Are you okay? So there's a connection. And then what did they say? We're okay. And the ski patrollers left. All right. So that's what's happening in real time. Now we go to the paperwork. Why don't we fill out a big deal, get everyone's statements and everything? Because if this happens all the time on ski resorts, if everyone's okay, I mean, we don't have a scene about it, but they go down a little longer. They know that Miss Paltrow was part of the collision, and then Terry, and you can believe him, but they now know. I'm not skiing too well. I don't feel that well. All right, fair enough. It did come 10 minutes after they found out who they had been involved with. All right, bring in Whitney. Whitney's an awesome, geez, I thought she was a fabulous witness. She pulls up and she's all business. Like, okay, I'm going to assess for unconsciousness. No, what happened? She says, what happened to Terry? He didn't say, I got hit. He says, I don't remember. I don't know. Did Craig immediately go in on that? I'll have to defer to a report. That was a legitimate question of mine. I'm trying to remember. James, when are you up? Are you up in 5?
Now.
I can do that.
Now, Owens.
That gives you 5 or 10?
Gives me 15.
Like a Gwyneth. Let James
Thanks.
go on now.
I'm going to be done in 5 minutes, folks. Okay. So Whitney's delightful, loads him up, takes him down, says, hey, before, I want you to remember 5 things. And this isn't like man, woman, dog. This is like, I got my degree in Michigan. I was Deer Valley Grand Slalom person, whatever. All these really detailed. I like horses, my horse's name, all this stuff. Remember it. Terry says, I remember. I knew I was now having a cognition memory test performed upon me. He goes down and she then says, do you remember? And oh my gosh, he remembered. In fact, he remembered so well, he decided this is a good opportunity for me to text and post a picture of Whitney smiling and just talk about how wonderful she is. Whitney, meanwhile, is sitting there trying to figure out, okay, are any problems here? Are you seeing any signs of concussion? No, I'm not.
So Whitney Smith was the woman who came and helped take Terry Sanderson down the hill on her toboggan. She said that she spent 2 hours with Terry as they were waiting for them to get the car. I don't know what country they went to get this car. I don't know why it took 2 hours for them to get the car, but she spent 2 hours with him. And never once did he say that he was feeling nauseous or sick or dizzy or any kind of the symptoms that you would discuss when you're having a concussion or a brain injury. And that's why she didn't put that in her report. She didn't check, concussion or brain injury because he never mentioned it, which makes a lot of people believe that this kind of idea about Gwyneth Paltrow causing this was like an after fact, like after the fact that Craig Ramon was like, oh, do you realize this, that Gwyneth Paltrow ran you down and she's the cause of all of your issues now? And this is, I think Whitney Smith was a very important witness. Interestingly, the defense was the one who called her, right? This witness that Terry Sanderson said was his angel.
Do you remember Dr. Edgley? I don't know if you thought that was cool, that a guy who heads up the Hughes Acquired Brain Injury Clinic has had an acquired brain injury. I thought it was kind of cool. Anyway, he goes, what do you look at? You look at a period of unconsciousness. We have Craig versus all these people saying he wasn't unconscious. They even imply like Christensen didn't even care about us. He's yelling at us, he's bullying us, and then he's abandoning us on the conscious, drooling on the mountain. Give me a break. Is that what you know Deer Valley to be? So then, okay, he checks out at the main clinic. Then he's down to the Instacare. What is that Instacare PA looking? He's looking for, no, I don't see any signs of symptoms of unconsciousness or concussion, because they're looking at memories, they're looking at periods of unconsciousness, and they're looking at, what's the third? Do you recall? Memory.
Ataxia.
That means inability to speech. I don't think that is what they were looking for. In any case, they're looking for any signs and the symptoms of concussion. No. Now that doesn't mean he didn't have a concussion, but it does mean this isn't anything severe at all. Okay, next day he goes to the VA. These are the people he knows. CT, guess what? They're like all the same abnormalities as you had in your brain before. The problem is, and by the way, he then goes for 3 neuro assessments, and they all say normal to above normal, in some ways really above normal. So neuro assessments, those are all his treating providers. Why would we have our experts go do neuro assessments when 3 separate treating providers that he knows and trusts and that no one's paying say above normal? Why would we do that? But the problem is he then goes to Gibby and Fong, and he just self-reports. Everything was normal beforehand. Wrong. And now everything's terrible. Wrong. He doesn't tell him he's flying all over the world, that he's biking, that he's the poster boy for fitness at age 75. Mm-hmm. He's posting every darn thing. This isn't like me sending out a private investigator and trying to find pictures. All I have to do is put Terry Sanderson. Oh my gosh, the guy's Mr. Activity.
True.
Heaven help me if I can be as active as he is at 75. All right. Facts. I have 1 more minute. I'm going to go back to Lady Liberty.
Oh, land
so we talked about the blindfold. Lady Justice, excuse me. We talked about the blindfold, and we talked about the scale. The sword. The sword, we want you to use the sword. This sounds harsh because we're not beheading anyone. The sword is to defend a meritless claim. This is a meritless claim. You don't throw a $3 million bombshell in the courtroom, call her King Kong, and walk away. You shouldn't reward that. And Gwyneth, who could have just paid it out, paid the ransom. No, I'm not doing that. I'm not going to have someone hurt me and then ask me for a lot of money. I'm not going to do it. I'm going to sit here. I said, you're going to have to sit here for 2 weeks in Park City, and you can't even look at your phone. And she said, I'm going to do it. I'm not paying that. We ask you for the dollar, not because she had to go in and get an early massage, but it screwed up a very carefully planned, important time in her life. Thank heavens the family melded well together. But we want our dollar. Thank you for your time.
Judge, can we approach briefly?
Sure.
I think Owens did a really good job with that closing. I mean, he hit all the points he needed to hit. And just to answer some of the questions about him being a vet, I think he was a doctor in the military. I think he was a captain. I'm not sure that he, like was in active combat the way people think when they're serving, but he was a vet. So, there is that. I think we need to give him respect for, for his service. And that's why he is able to go to the VA, is because he was a captain as a doctor in the military. I'm not sure if it was the Army or which one. Let's try to get to James, who is everyone's favorite. He does an excellent job. I think he only has like 10 minutes left, by the way. So we'll try to go through his, then we'll get to the verdict, and then we'll watch the jurors interview, which was very interesting. It's only like 10 or 12 minutes. And for those of you who haven't watched it, it's really insightful as to what the jury was thinking about when they were coming to the verdict.
From
And poor James, he's just running out of time, so he's trying to go really fast here. Let's see.
His claim that he's not living the life that he used to live, and it's Ms. Paltrow's fault. Hope I can be helpful to you as we walk through some of this. I wanted to start by just pointing to this document. This, you remember, Whitney Smith was the ski patroller that arrived and wrote this report that day. A little bit later, Mr. Owens could not recall an important fact. This is the witness section at the bottom is not filled out. Mr. Ramon did not come forward and say, this is what happened. Let me tell you about it. Whitney Smith would have written that in there if he did. She also pointed to, we also pointed to the fact that she did not write an X at that concussion and head boxes where she could have noted possible injury. She's, to use one of Mr. Sykes' phrases, she has no dog in this fight. She would have put X's there if she was concerned about that. She
Right.
didn't.
That's correct.
You also heard her talk about mild disorientation in her report, and that shows up here. And I think you've seen that the point, gosh, I'm sorry. This thing can be finicky. You've seen it. I'll just move forward for the sake of time. There's those mild disorientation notes, right? And she explained that she didn't see that as indication of concussion. She just saw it as being kind of rattled from a ski collision. And that's relevant to damages because Mr. Sanderson is claiming that he had a concussion, and all of the symptoms that have come from the collision relate back to that concussion. I think there's considerable doubt that he even had one. He may have, and you could certainly find that, but you might find that he didn't have a concussion. I think, though, that I want to kind of frame this with a certain theme. Maybe you've seen a pattern over the course of these last couple weeks, or the last 2 weeks. On the one hand, you have real events, and then on the other hand, you have embellishments. On the one hand, you have objective tests, and on the other hand, you have subjective reports. On the one hand, you have what happened in the past, and then on the other hand, you have perception of what happened in the past. The realities of life, sometimes difficult realities, and on the other hand, you have anxious exaggerations. I think Mr. Ramon took the reality of the collision and spun it into an attention-grabbing story for friends about dramatic injuries and celebrity. He was talking a lot about that. Ms. Smith overheard it as she was caring for Mr. Sanderson. And then there were those comments that we found in the middle of trial where he talked about it, and you heard him explain that he'd been talking about it with friends. He knew a lot about Ms. Paltrow. He's very interested in this. I think he took that reality of the collision and embellished that what happened, what he saw. And Mr. Sanderson's taken the reality of his aging body and he's turned it into a profound injustice perpetrated by Ms. Paltrow. It isn't that. The facts show that his health challenges started long before the collision, and they've progressed in a predictable way. I think you heard Dr. Hesh yesterday say, if you look at his medical records, you look through the history, you take the collision out of that timeline, it reads coherently. The prior stuff would predict the next stuff. You don't need the collision to explain what happens afterwards. It's not to say that he didn't have injuries in the collision. Nobody disputes the broken ribs. And those were certainly painful. They did heal. And then the concussion, if he had one, was very brief, as you heard multiple experts say yesterday, and had very mild symptoms that may have even resolved within that day. So even if you find that Ms. Paltrow caused the accident, I think you only have sufficient evidence to find damages that relate to those broken ribs and the concussion that resolved very quickly. The slow degeneration of bodies is hard to accept, and mental health challenges are hard to face. It's obviously human to want a concrete explanation for these difficulties. But as the court has instructed you, Mr. Sanderson should not receive the money he asked for if you find that his perceptions do not match reality. The law requires that he convince you that more likely than not, he has suffered real harm, that Ms. Paltrow is and that Ms. Paltrow is the cause of that harm, and he has not done that. Through the course of the trial, you've seen that Mr. Sanderson does have genuine problems, and I don't want to minimize that. Experts from both sides have talked about his anxiety and depression and
So I think James does a really great job here being kind of like level and even keeled, right? And stating that these things that Terry Sanderson is experiencing is real. He had broken ribs. He probably had some concussion symptoms afterwards that resolved itself probably within a few months. And that his deterioration that is probably connected to just growing old became personalized, and he basically used Gwyneth Paltrow as a scapegoat to explain why he perhaps is no longer as acutely, alert. But I don't know about that. I mean, you guys let me know in the chat. I felt like he was pretty darn articulate and eloquent on the witness stand. I found that he was incredibly smart, and he sounded like he had all of his faculties. I do not feel like he had severe brain injury as he was. What just happened? Shoot. I think my camera just died. Okay. I don't know what happened. My camera just went. I'm trying to turn it back on. Oh, there we go. Sorry about that. It can't be a Tyler live without something going wrong, right? Okay, let's continue there. I'm sorry about that.
The trouble he's had with family and relationships before and after the accident. We've seen brain scans. Dr. Black came in here and he was the only expert, I believe, that took you through all of them and explained how they, were back in 2009, look very similar to what you've seen going forward. They're connected to abnormalities related to aging and other conditions that might explain his problems. But Mr. Sanderson's argued that you should believe his experts because they evaluated him personally. The problem, I think, with that argument is that, as you've learned these past 2 weeks, these experts didn't carefully review his medical history, and they relied heavily on his unreliable reports about it. They also want you to believe what they've been calling the before and after witnesses, the family and the daughters, the friend, and then the girlfriend. And I think that you've learned these past 2 weeks that they didn't know Mr. Sanderson's health as well as they thought they did. And he was actually, they had, I think, acknowledged that he's good at hiding some of those issues, maybe totally understandably, and reluctant to share his troubles. So you have objective facts and then subjective reports. And the law requires you to find evidence, reality, not just the perception of problems. From our experts, you've heard a consistent, compelling account that Mr. Sanderson had these problems before that the concussion occurred, potentially, again, very briefly, if at all, and that those conditions that he's experienced afterward that he attributes to Ms. Paltrow are the predictable consequence of that prior history. They were, you heard them all yesterday. I guess you had Dr. Edgley the night before, but you heard them all, and it's a coherent, consistent story. I think you got a sense that they've read the records carefully, the objective records of treaters who have, again, no dog in this fight, just reporting what is going on for many years before and after the collision. Your Honor, I have till 25?
Yes.
Okay, 5 more minutes. I got a lot. I'm not going to get to all of it, but again, I'll try to get to the helpful stuff. Mr. Owens went through the various evidence about loss of consciousness and the different witnesses that have, I hope, persuaded you that Mr. Sanderson did not get knocked out for multiple minutes. But Dr. Eastful gave you some interesting testimony yesterday. She said that the medical records after the accident are actually inconsistent with serious concussion injury. There was the cognitive assessments she pointed to that were normal. There was the balance assessment that was normal. You wouldn't expect it to be normal. And then there was the alcohol intake that actually increased, even though a concussion would reduce your tolerance for alcohol. Again, careful looking at the events in question, which I don't think you heard plaintiffs' experts do. Mr. Sanderson's perception is different, obviously. He not only thinks he was knocked out for minutes, but he said he had a profound cognitive trouble during this time with Ms. Smith, who said he was cognitively intact, could speak to him. He was writing articulate posts about her, could carry on conversation for hours. So you got careful evaluation on the one hand, and then you have extreme exaggeration on the other. And the law requires you to be careful in your evaluation. Mr. Sanderson sees the time immediately following the collision as a grim period that began a spiral, began spiraling his life out of control. I think he described the bright side before and then the dark side afterward. And I think it's important to recognize that, as we've probably told you too many times, a few weeks just prior to this collision, he was reporting some of the symptoms and the concerns he's saying connect to the collision, right? He's said he was getting old all of a sudden, he couldn't do things that he used to do, get preoccupied with paperwork and other little things. And that's difficult. And I don't mean to make light of that kind of reality that aging brings upon all of us. But it's important that at that time, there was no litigation. He's just reporting. And you heard from experts that point to that as a telltale sign of the kinds of things you would expect after the collision that he's attributing to Ms. Paltrow. Mr. Sanderson's told you that the collision forced him to be a recluse. And if we had time, I would pull up those pictures. We went through a lot of them, and I hope that wasn't overboard. You got a sense of just how much he has done since the collision. Traveled more than some people have traveled in their whole lives.
Yes.
And I think it's
Me for sure.
This $3 million, I don't know where the board is, $3 million claim, I think doesn't acknowledge that reality. Mr. Sanderson is better than he realizes that he is.
Yes. Yes.
And it's not that he doesn't have problems. It's just that he is better than he realizes he is. And it's hard for him to accept some of the decline that he's experienced. And he's, again, grabbed onto this collision as an explanation for it. You've heard from Dr. Hesh and Dr. Edgley about how litigation contributes to problems like he's had. And you heard even from his own expert, Dr. Goldstein, that he's obsessed with this case and it's not good for him, that moving on would be helpful for him. And I think that we all want resolution to this case. Mr. Sanderson's asking to be compensated for a ski injury that the evidence shows that he himself caused. And the evidence also shows that his life is not the mess he perceives it to be. Ms. Paltrow wants him off the mountain too, but she should not be responsible for the cost of that. And so we leave you with that argument. Hope that you can, of course, hope you're persuaded, and thank you for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Egan. Mr. Sorensen?
I know my camera went dead. I'm still here. I'm letting it charge up for a little bit. I apologize.
Thank you. Thank you for being here.
Oh, Pete, I have this. Sorry.
Thank you for that.
I know I have a black screen. I'm trying to let my camera charge up for a bit so it can come back up. So we're just going to watch this last plaintiff's attorney do his closing bit. And David, I wanted to mention your alcohol bit because it's very important to note that one of the experts stated that when a person has brain injuries, especially severe brain injuries, what usually happens is you can't drink alcohol as much because your tolerance goes down, and actually alcohol makes you feel sicker when you have brain injury. So that seems to directly refute Terry Sanderson's claim that he has brain injury because he actually started drinking way, way more after the accident.
We appreciate the time and attention that you've spent with us the last couple of weeks going on kind of this journey. There's been a lot of fanfare, a lot of hubbub about this. You've seen a lot of technology. Some has failed, as we've seen today, but some has worked. And through all of that, I want to remind you of jury instruction number 24. Okay, and it says, when the lawyers are giving their closing arguments, keep in mind that they are advocating their views of the case. What they say during closing arguments is not evidence. If the lawyers say anything about the evidence that conflicts with what you remember, you are to rely on your memory of the evidence. If they say anything about the law that conflicts with these instructions, you are to rely on these instructions. Now, you've heard some pretty amazing narratives, a spin on the facts, and you could probably say it cuts both ways, both sides. But I want you to remember about this case that there are two stories here. One is Gwyneth Paltrow, and you've heard her defense attorneys lay out her case. You've heard her side of the story. But there's also another side, and that is Terry Sanderson. They've done a really good job of telling you about what Craig Ramon says about how he describes this whole thing happening, and what Gwyneth Paltrow says, or what Eric Christensen says. But the two stories that are important to remember are Terry Sanderson's and Gwyneth Paltrow's. Terry remembers skiing down the mountain.
See, this is the part that I had trouble with, right? Because you don't call your client's point of view and retelling a story. You say, these are the facts, right? You would say, this is what happened, and Terry Sanderson is telling you the facts. You wouldn't tell that it's a story. And I found it really interesting that he called them both stories, right? Because if it was me, I would say, Gwyneth Paltrow has her story and we have the facts, right? That's how I would have presented it. And it was very interesting that he said that they were both stories. Does that mean that he doesn't really believe his client? What do you guys think?
Hearing a scream directly behind him, and then bam, as he put it, lights out. Okay? He's knocked unconscious. He's left on the mountain figuratively, as we've talked about, trying to figure out what's going on. When he comes to, it's chaos. He doesn't really understand what's going on. On the other hand, we have Gwyneth Paltrow, who says that she's skiing along and all of a sudden she gets hit from behind. It's up to you now to weigh that evidence, to see what you remember, what you recall, not the way that the attorneys characterize the evidence, but what you see in the record. And I will tell you that what you see in the record corroborates the story of Terry Sanderson. Terry Sanderson, I just walked you through his tale of what happened, okay? His versions of facts that happened.
His tale?
When he's hit from behind, he has to rely on the one person, remember that, the one person that says that they saw the actual collision and saw what happened. He has to rely on that. But it doesn't mean that it's not part of his story. It means that he's relying on an eyewitness that corroborates what he said. Also, we have the meetup group post that's been talked a lot about and the comments to that post. That's contemporaneous evidence the day of that corroborates the story that these two have shared with you. It says, and in Craig Ramon's own words, says, it scared the hell out of me. It scared him. Scared what he was scared. So that might be an account that you weigh as to why he didn't step in to try to give life-saving or life-supporting measures to his friend. He's scared. He doesn't know what's happening, and the person that he's relying on to take charge of the situation comes over and starts screaming at him. It's also important to remember that Brad Falchuk, who we didn't get a chance to hear from, and Carrie Oakes both contradict in major ways
So, Your Honor,
his
he
story, his
cannot
testimony.
reference the testimony of Brad Faltrow.
He admitted, Your Honor, and that was
Just
a
a minute.
He admitted, Your Honor, that he did not see it.
Your Honor, that testimony
That was
is
a
not
Just a
in
minute. Just a minute. Yeah, that's true. That was a stipulated fact.
That's a stipulated fact. So
Thank you.
Brad Falchuk did not see it.
Do you see her shaking her head?
Eric Christensen, in his own reporting, didn't see the collision. But yet, right afterwards, he injects himself into this chaotic event and, according to him, takes control. He has enough time. Think about this when you're weighing believability of testimony, okay? Eric Christensen has enough time and is all aware about the students that he's being paid to watch and to teach how to ski that are beginner students. Watch what someone's doing on the other side of the run at the same time.
Okay. I'm going to skip it
Celebrity.
because he basically
Said
doesn't
they
say
destroy your life.
anything.
And they turned around and said, it's your fault.
Compelling.
It's your fault that this happened.
Your Honor, I object and would like a little conference unless you want me to state my objection right in here.
I think just overruled, and you
Celebrities.
can make a record later, but let's let him finish.
Thank you.
I don't want her lumped in with
Terry
other
Sanderson.
celebrities.
Thank you, Judge.
Thanks. They point the finger at Terry Sanderson saying, it's your fault. You did.
Their instructions. All of the exhibits admitted into evidence, they are being assembled, clerk, and then same with the following The clerk to admit
and take them to speak to them, nor to do so. Your verdict
may now take the jury back. Thank you.
They've instructed the jury to go back to deliberate now. So here is something that happened that's very interesting. I don't know if you guys caught this part, but there's a lawyer who's about to come on who is the ultimate boss. I mean, this man is amazing. Wait to hear what he says. He's someone completely unrelated to this trial, but he represents Court TV. Takes him a long time.
Thank you, counsel. Mr. Owens, did you need to make a record on?
It's hard to sue a celebrity. I thought that was an unfair statement given it's this person. This is a person here, not a celebrity. And I thought it was unfair to sort of slime her with Hollywood.
And the court anticipated that and
Look at her face.
and noted what I was thinking about was the fact that the plaintiff basically said the same thing on the stand, and I think he was just repeating that. So as far as, well, are there any exceptions that need to be taken on the record otherwise? Okay. I wonder if there's been a motion filed by some members of the press concerning how to handle the reading of the verdict. Mr. Raymond, are you in the courtroom? Mr. Hunt, is that right? Why don't you come up and present your motion? If you could first identify yourself, your bar number, and then who it is you're representing.
I was like, who is this guy? I was
Good
so
afternoon,
confused.
Your Honor. Jeff Hunt. My bar number is 5855. I represent Court TV, ABC News, CNN, Daily Mail, the Associated Press, and NBC News.
I'm ready to hear your motion.
We did file a motion, Your Honor, to modify the court's electronic media coverage order and decorum order, which previously through the trial has restricted EMC coverage of counsel tables. And as the court knows, this is a case that's attracted substantial national and international attention. I think it's actually been a marvelous opportunity for the public to observe how the court reaches decisions, how cases are litigated, and we all benefit from that transparency, that accountability. That is what the EMC rule that was adopted by the Supreme Court was intended to serve. And as Your Honor knows, under the EMC rule, Rule 4.401, electronic media coverage is presumed within the limitations of the rule. And subsection 6 of the rule, there's several limitations for not showing the jurors, not showing minors, not showing exhibits that haven't been admitted, etc. Counsel's table is not within subsection 6. So as the rule stands, the presumption is that there should be electronic media coverage of counsel's table. And we just simply wanted to clarify for the court that when the jury comes in and announces their verdict, that the videographer and the still photographer for the Associated Press be allowed to show the public, as everybody here in the courtroom would see, counsel's table. I mean, that is the most important part of the trial. This is what we've all been leading up to. Everybody here in the courtroom will be able to observe counsel and the parties when that verdict is announced. And we simply believe that consistent with the rule, unless there is an overwhelming, and the rule says a compelling interest, not to show the parties and the lawyers during the announcement, that it should be allowed, and the court should modify the order to allow still camera photography and the video coverage. We've participated with Court TV in over 30 years of trials, live coverage. We've never had once a situation where the public wasn't allowed to observe the parties and the counsel when the verdict was announced. And that's for good reason.
Okay. I just want to pause this and talk about this because we all know what he's trying to say here. They want photographs and videos of Gwyneth Paltrow's face when the verdict is read, because that's what sells money, right? Remember when Brad and Angelina had their babies, and I don't know what magazine that was, paid them millions of dollars to show the babies on the camera, on the cover. And of course they donated that money, but this is what it all comes down to. I mean, he's making a First Amendment rights issue. I understand that, but it feels a little disingenuous to me because we all know what he's trying to say. They just want a photograph of her face when the verdict is read. You know what the public gets to see when they come to the court? They get to see the back of their heads, right? Because you see all those people who are sitting there right now, typically they would see the back of heads, right? You don't actually get to stand in front of the court, like next to the judge, which is what he's going to ask for next, right? That the photographer get to stand next to the judge, because they don't care about the lawyer's faces or the plaintiff's face. They want to get Gwyneth Paltrow's face because that is what is going to sell, print for them, or print or views for them, right? Don't you guys agree?
You've had 7 years of litigation, as I understand it. You've had 2 weeks of trial. And the most important people, the people that have the most interest in the outcome of this litigation, is the parties and their counsel. And the public ought to be able to observe them when the verdict is announced. And again, under the rule, Your Honor, the burden is on the party seeking to impose an additional limitation under the EMC rule to come forward with some explanation for why that would be particularly harmful or prejudicial. And there simply isn't any reason for that. If you look at the reasons, the factors that are in the rule, all those factors weigh in favor of allowing EMC coverage of the verdict announcement.
How do you envision this happening physically?
I'm not sure where Wes would like to be positioned, the still photographer. I imagine
There would be a still camera right here,
okay.
but without an operator. That is be remote. Is that possible?
I'm not sure if that works for still, but the video would just be as the video would normally work.
Right.
For the still.
We had a still camera up there 2 days ago.
Yeah, there was a still camera up here before, Mr. Hunt, but I don't know how much control the photographer had over that camera. And it had a very big, long lens, and it was focused on one individual.
He says he could fire it remotely from that position, the camera.
But can they? I mean, if it's
The aperture.
well, I'm just wondering if it would be focused on one individual or be focused on both counsel tables at once. I mean, how do you foresee that?
Well, today I don't have the ability to set this thing up.
Okay. So at this point, physically, what it would require is a photographer to be standing over here and taking pictures. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes. I don't
Okay.
have the remote with me today.
Okay. And I mean, the court TV camera is very unobtrusive. I don't see it. I don't hear it. It can pan and move and do all sorts of things without anyone noticing it. I realize that right now, I mean, this will be the end of the case. So the concern of an interruption of the proceeding is different, but it's still there in terms of decorum. How can we maintain court decorum and still meet the request?
It is there, Your Honor, but we could station the photographer there in a place that's unobtrusive. The jury's here. The focus is going to be here. It's going to be very brief. It's not like we're asking.
And why can't the still photographer take stills off of the court TV feed?
I'm not.
It's bad quality. It's going to be grainy.
They're just different.
I'll hear from both sides.
Yeah, they're just different modes of capturing the image. The still photographer is just set up, designed just.
So I'm going to fast forward this because I want to get to the verdict and to the jurors' interview. So basically, what happens here is they agree to let him do this. They agree to let him take a picture. I think at this point, if I'm guessing, Owens and Gwyneth probably knows that they're probably going to win, and that's why they're comfortable letting them take a picture of her. But the photographer next to the judge is weird. I mean, guess only because a celebrity is involved, right? Okay, let's fast forward to the verdict. So they go out for, I believe, like almost 3 hours. So we're at almost 6 hours, 5.5 hours right now. They come back at 8:30. Let's see. I want to go too far. Okay. This is when they find out there is a verdict. Oh, good night, Cap. Thanks so much for hanging out with us.
All right, I think we've got everyone in here that wants to come in. If you could be seated, and I'd like to just say a few things before we call the jury in. There is a verdict in the case. I think you've all been told that. Before the jury enters, I just want to say a few things that I say in every case. The court appreciates that this has been a long and difficult trial for the parties and their counsel, and that emotions may be running high. The court reminds everyone that there should be no outward reaction when the verdict is read, and that these proceedings are not over until the court has been adjourned. Most importantly, and regardless of the verdict, the jury has sacrificed more than 8 days of their time to serve, and they are entitled to be shown the same courtesy and respect that they have been shown throughout these proceedings. I want to remind the people that are all here that there are strict orders that are in place concerning the use of phones, cameras, recording devices, unless you've been approved, and there are only 2 people in here that have been approved for capturing anything by video, by audio, or by still, you should not use your cell phone or any other device that might capture those things.
I'm so nervous. I mean,
Thank
I
you.
already know the verdict, but
Ready for the jury?
I was so nervous at this point in real life. I was like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen?
And I have been impressed with how well everyone has been throughout this proceeding. So thank you all.
Well, but like sick. Everyone's sick. That whole courtroom is a cesspool of illness right now. David, I don't think there's a trial until the prelim hearing for Rust at the beginning of May.
For those that are arriving late, there's no use of any recording devices at all.
This judge is really nice. He's very, very nice. I might also cover the Brittany Dawn Davis. I don't know if you guys know who she is. She's an influencer who scammed people, and I have a deep hatred for influencers who scam their fans. The courtroom is packed now. It's very tense. We all know what happens, but it's still like this moment. Tam, that was a lot. Oh, there might be a hearing about the attorney's fees. Yes, if there is, I'll cover it.
Thank you. For the record, the jury is now in the courtroom and the parties are present with their attorneys. Would the foreperson that the jury has selected please stand and state your number?
Number 19.
Thank you. Has the jury reached a verdict?
We have here.
Will you please hand it to the bailiff and the bailiff will bring it to me? Thank you. You may be seated.
Ooh, I've seen this before and it's still like makes me tense. How many of you are watching this like for the first time?
Thank you. We'll now have the clerk read the verdict.
Was Gwyneth Paltrow at fault? No. Was Gwyneth Paltrow's fault a cause of Terry Sanderson's harm? Oh, no, skip that.
There's just no response there.
Okay. Was Terry Sanderson at fault? Yes.
Yes.
Was Terry Sanderson's fault a cause Gwyneth Paltrow's? Did Terry Sanderson's fault cause Gwyneth Paltrow's harm? Yes. Comparative fault. What percent of the fault do you assign to Terry Sanderson? 100%.
100%.
Damages. What amount fairly compensates Gwyneth Paltrow for economic damages? $1.
Nice.
Signed March 30th, 2023.
Thank you. So to juror number 19, the foreperson, is this your verdict?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. And the attorneys have asked that I poll the jury, and so I need to ask each one of you if this is your verdict. This is not an unusual thing to happen. It happens quite often. So number 16, is this your verdict?
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you. Number 11, is this your verdict?
Yes, Your Honor.
Number 8, is this your verdict?
Yes, Your Honor.
Number 2, is this your verdict?
Yes, Your Honor.
I've already covered number 19. Number 28, is this your verdict?
Yes, Your Honor.
Number 29, is this your verdict?
Yes, Your Honor.
And number 32, is this your verdict?
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you. So to the attorneys, is there anything further before I discharge the jury?
It was unanimous.
Nothing for the plaintiff.
No, thank you, Your Honor.
Okay,
Thank you to the jury.
let me just read you the last jury instruction. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this trial is finished. Thank you for your service. The American system of justice relies on your time and your sound judgment. and you have been generous with both. You served justice by your fair and impartial decision.
See,
I hope you found the
you're not looking
experience
at anyone
rewarding.
else, this camera.
You may now talk about this case with anyone you like. You may be contacted by the press or by the lawyers. You do not have to talk to them or with anyone else, but you may. The choice is entirely yours. I turn now to the lawyers and to the press and ask them to honor your wishes if you say that you do not want to talk about the case. If you do decide to talk about the case, please respect the privacy of your fellow jurors. The confidences that they may have shared with you while deliberating are not yours to share with others. Again, thank you for your service. You may now retire. And if everybody
See, she's smiling. She's so relieved. And that judge gave some really great instructions that, typically judges don't say that to the jury, right? To respect what might have been shared during deliberations, because people might share their own personal stories. Oh, this happened to me, and so I think this and that. So he's asking them to hold their confidence. And by the way, Attorney Hunt, you said you wanted to show all the attorneys' tables and the plaintiffs and everybody, and yet the camera is on Gwyneth Paltrow, just like I predicted it would be. And so watch here, for those of you who haven't seen this, watch when Gwyneth Paltrow leaves the courtroom. She says something to Terry Sanderson, and everyone was trying to guess what she said. And she said something that was very kind. She said, "I wish you well." So let's watch that.
else would please remain here. We've got some things to do.
All right, jury.
See, she's nervous. Like, she's wringing her hands. Like, it's
May be seated.
that's very real for her.
So I've got a few things I'm going to do with the parties, and then I'm going to ask everyone who's still in the courtroom at that point to remain seated while the parties leave. So anyone who wants to be outside when the parties leave, please do that now.
That's like everybody, all the press.
So Mr. Owens, I'm looking to you to prepare a judgment on the jury verdict.
Perfect.
Will you do that?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Sykes, is there anything further for the court before the court adjourns?
No, my client just wants to say thank you to Your Honor for the effort you made. Okay? That's it.
Thank you. Mr. Owens, is there anything further from the defense before the court adjourns?
No, thank you, Judge, and to all your staff and the bailiffs.
Let me just comment that I appreciate the professionalism that all the attorneys have shown and the parties, so thank you. This court is now adjourned. Thank
Gonna
you.
let my client slip out before.
Yes, everyone remain seated while the parties leave.
I'm going to make a quick statement. Ms. Paltrow is not going to be making a
See,
statement today.
right there. She
So you
said
can make the
"Thank you,
statement
Rob."
outside, Mr. Owens.
I will
Very
do that.
classy.
Okay.
There goes my camera again, guys. All right, we're gonna go to the jurors. I'm just gonna give my camera a second. I'm sorry. You just please bear with me. Let's
11. She was, Sam Emery is her name. She was one of the jurors, the 8 jurors that decided the Gwyneth Paltrow ski crash trial from yesterday.
this
And
is the juror.
Sam,
Oh,
thanks so
sorry.
much.
Let
We
me
appreciate the opportunity to talk to you.
Thank you.
How
let's
much was celebrity?
sorry.
a
Let
factor in the
me
deliberations and the verdicts?
let's go to
I can honestly say that it wasn't a factor. I think it's important, and I think it's important for the public to know that this was our decision, and this is based off evidence. This is based off the law. Everybody
So
has to be looked
this
at
is
in
the
the same
juror,
way and
one of
counted.
who was the nurse.
And in terms of the deliberations, what was it like?
Oh, let me turn it up. Sorry. Why is it so low?
Exciting at first. So we've gone 2 weeks now and haven't been able to talk to each other at all about the case. So I think we are all very excited to finally share our feelings and be able to come to some conclusions and, come with a verdict.
So for 2 weeks, you're with the jury. I mean, the jury is leaving, entering the courtroom. You're talking,
Yes,
but you can't talk about the case.
correct.
What'd you talk about?
Families, kids, dogs, work, just anything but the case. Basically, we got to know each other
Oh,
pretty
thank
well.
you,
And I can
David.
honestly say my fellow people of Summit County are amazing humans. And I can't wait to get back together with them.
Everybody in that on that jury is from Summit County.
Yes.
And so when finally you get the jury instructions and you have the questionnaire that's provided by the court, and you go back into the deliberation room, was it a sense of relief at that point that finally you can talk about this to one another?
Definitely some relief, definitely. And I think it was, for me at least, a little bit exciting, like I mentioned, just to be able to hear what everyone else was thinking. Are they thinking the same thing as I am? Or are we going to be in here for 3 days trying to figure this out? Like, I had no idea.
And what did you find out very quickly about what the other jurors were thinking?
I very quickly found out that we were, in fact, on the same page. For the most part, I think everyone had their own opinions, but it just came down to that we all saw the same evidence. We all learned about the same laws, and we just had to come up with a verdict based on that.
And was there ever a doubt at one point as to what the verdict might be? Were there differences of opinion among the jurors?
I wouldn't say there was necessarily differences in opinions. I think some of the jurors had a more difficult time making an opinion at all, really, because it's really hard.
Didn't want to make a decision.
It's really hard to put somebody at fault, right? It's really hard to say, when you were not there, this is your fault. But then again, we had to go back and look at the evidence and the law, and that's how we, came to our verdict.
Was anybody starstruck?
I didn't get that sense from my fellow jurors. Nobody was really talking about Gwyneth a ton, and I honestly, I don't think so.
That's
but
nice to
we
hear.
weren't really allowed to talk about the case, so I don't know.
Okay. And very quickly, you reach a decision. I mean, some juries go out for days.
Right.
This jury did not.
No.
Why was it so fast?
I think we had enough evidence, and it really, so 8 days of this was not just about who did this, it's about the damages, right? So all we needed to decide was who was at fault. And I think we had just such a long time to think about it and process the evidence and because we were all clearly on the same page, it only took us about 2.5 hours. And yeah.
Were you surprised that all the jurors were on the same page?
Yes, I was surprised. Because even though you're spending 2 weeks with these people, you just don't know what's in their mind. You don't know what they're thinking. You don't know what they heard. You don't know their experiences. So I was surprised.
Was there for you an aha moment in this case?
I think there was. I don't think I really knew it at the time, but the entire case, I was waiting for somebody to talk about the slope angle of the slope, talk about how skiing works, and somebody who actually knew about skiing, right? Because this comes down to it. It's a ski accident. You have to have some background in skiing. So when Dr. Schur came on, I was like, finally, yes, it clicks. It makes sense. There's an expert that's here to testify about what I've been thinking this whole time. Why did nobody's skis release? If it happened the way
Yes, so that was a really big point, right? Because Dr. Shear, right, he's the biomechanical engineer who was like the genius. Like he was the one who did the drawings, and he stated that if Terry Sanderson had flown like he said he did, his boots would have snapped off or his skis would have come off, and they didn't. And I think that was a really, really important testimony.
Terry Sanderson says it happened, why did nobody's skis come off? And that for me the whole time did not make sense. But to hear it from an expert was what I needed.
So this was a biomechanical expert witness.
Yes.
And that was key to you.
That was key to me. He has a lot of background in snow science and snow safety, and he could really speak to how much force it would take at which point on the ski to make the skis release.
Okay. So what did you think of Gwyneth Paltrow's testimony?
I thought Gwyneth's testimony, was the truth ultimately.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that,
Yeah.
I've said this, that you have to take into account she's an actress, but she's also in the spotlight, and she's also got to assume her entire life is recorded. I mean, the paparazzi are, I'm assuming, always around, even on the snow, So the thing is that she probably thought this whole thing was recorded, and somewhere out there it would come out. And I don't think she had any reason to lie under oath. So
This is really interesting because when I saw her first interview, so I haven't seen this interview, I saw the shorter interview that she gave, and her response is, well, she's a celebrity, she's in the spotlight, so she's probably telling the truth. So that didn't totally make sense to me, because I was thinking, we have certainly known a lot of celebrities who have lied, but I guess, so she further explained it here with the concept that probably somebody was recording this. And it's actually a big surprise that nobody came out with a GoPro video of this, right? Maybe 7 years ago, it wasn't quite as common, but now I think when you're skiing, everybody has it. And after the fact, Deer Valley did install cameras. There are cameras everywhere on the slopes now, I think because of what happened here. And I've been hearing that a lot of celebrities, when they go skiing now, will have their like bodyguards wear GoPros for this specific case, right? Just for security in general, but because of, I think, what happened to Gwyneth Paltrow, because you just don't know now. People might target celebrities to try to get a payday, unfortunately.
believed her testimony. I think it was the facts.
What about Terry Sanderson's testimony?
I think Terry's testimony just didn't make sense to me. I think that was how he believes the accident happened. It just didn't make sense. And the witnesses, his expert witnesses, even contraindicated like some of the things he was saying.
Was there a villain in this case for you?
I don't think there was a villain, no.
This was an honest disagreement.
I think
based on two different perspectives.
Right. I think it was an accident. However, I do think there was some fault due to the fact that Mr. Sanderson was out there skiing with decreased vision in his eye. He should have been wearing a skier's vest that indicated people need to stay away from me because I'm limited on what I can hear and see. And I think that's, a lot of the reason I think he's at fault is because that's his responsibility. Because he has these deficits, he needs to let the other skiers be aware.
Did everybody think he hit her?
Yes. Yes.
No doubt about that.
There was no doubt about that.
So did you?
So that's interesting. I don't ski, so I didn't realize that there are these things called the ski vest that you could wear. So remember, he was blind in one eye. I believe he was blind in his right eye due to his stroke. And there was a part in the cross where Owens asked him if he was blind in his right eye, and he says, oh no, it's fine. I use that term loosely. And Owens was like, aren't you an optometrist? How do you use the word blind loosely? I just felt like that was incredibly damaging to him, to be honest. And I am not totally sure. Can you ski if you're blind in one eye? I just don't have enough experience to know that about skiing.
And when you're going through this and you've got people who are like, oh boy, this is a hard decision. Maybe they don't want to make the decision. Did you have to bring them around?
No, I don't think that was really the purpose of the deliberation, because we never were at the point where we didn't have 6 people that agreed. So these people who were kind of on the fence, I think that they just wanted to hear our opinions. And like I said, it's a really hard thing to blame and put fault on someone.
Mm-hmm.
And especially someone who may be suffering from some of the things that Mr. Sanderson was suffering from. And, I just think that some people had a really hard time, and that's just not what, you can't get sympathetic in there. And that was why people were having a hard time, is because I think that they were a little bit sympathetic.
To him?
Yes.
And what about to her?
Oh, definitely. I mean, I think we were sympathetic for both of them. I mean, we're humans.
Yeah.
But we can't let that affect us in our decision making.
You're a skier. You ski a lot.
I am.
Okay. I like to ski too. Could you believe that a ski crash led to all of this?
No. And I think that's a big takeaway. And I think it's going to change things in the ski industry. Even today I was skiing and I noticed new signage up saying, stay 15 feet away from everyone. I was like, wow, okay. So this is serious. And I think a lawsuit coming from a ski accident, I mean, I know they happen. I've never heard of one.
Yeah. And most of the time I've seen it. My son was involved in a big ski accident at Deer Valley.
I'm sorry.
Woman ran into him and they get up, he gets up, dusts himself off, answers the questions for the ski patrol. Have a nice day.
Yeah.
Is that the way this should have worked?
I do believe so. I mean, I do think that there was some unique circumstances. She is a celebrity. He was injured more severely than I think he had thought at first. And I think that all plays into how this just got completely out of control. And I do think that's how it should have gone. I think they should have made, hey, you're okay. Okay, good. Like, let's go home. Sorry. Oh, of course. And if you decide to get checked out later and something is wrong, that's awful, but that's kind of part of the risk you take.
Yeah. How were you selected as a juror?
So we had jury selection. Let me see, how many Fridays ago was this? I'm not even sure. And we had jury selection, and there was 92 people in there, and they interviewed not all of us. They didn't get through everyone. They interviewed a majority of us, and then they told us after a long day, I believe it was like 8 to 5:15, that we were selected. And I was pretty shocked I was selected. I was dreading it, and I kind of did dread it through the process a bit, but I was happy to serve my civic duty. And, in the end, I think everything worked out.
But at first you were reluctant. You were a reluctant juror.
I was.
Yeah.
Oh, I was trying to get out of it. Yep, I was.
How are you trying to get out of it?
Oh, I have plans. I have work, the typical excuses.
And did you know that you were being selected when did you know that you were being selected for this trial?
So they told us in selection that it was Terry Sanderson versus Gwyneth Paltrow. I honestly was like, is there multiple Gwyneth Paltrows? She doesn't live here. This can't be her. I don't know. I didn't think so much of it. And then I guess we learned more about the case when we came, or maybe they told us after selection a little bit. But I had no idea the severity of this case. So you knew the name. I mean, obviously everybody knows the name, right.
but you didn't really. It didn't stick. It didn't register that this is maybe kind of a big deal.
It didn't.
Yeah.
I think that was one of the questions they asked me, and I was, do you know about this case? And I said, I think I've heard something, but no, I don't. And I found it kind of unusual living in Summit County that I hadn't really heard so much about it.
Did you, So you're reluctant going in, and
None of us heard about it.
We're glad you performed your civic duty, but did you enjoy it?
Whew, some parts I did. Some parts were interesting, entertaining. There was some entertainment for sure. Like I said, I loved
Like
the
the
fellow
attorneys?
jurors, amazing people. I would say overall, I'm just happy it's over with. I'm happy we came to a verdict, and I'm happy we didn't take a week to deliberate, and I have my life back. So
What about the judge and the lawyers?
the judge is amazing.
Yes.
I think we might have a juror
Agreed.
union, and he's definitely invited. And the lawyers, well, that was the entertainment.
Yes.
There was a lot of
I'm glad you
arguing.
said that.
That's a lot of arguing. You're talking about the arguing in court, or you're talking about the arguing among the jurors?
Not between the jurors,
Okay.
between the lawyers,
Uh-huh.
about how much time they were getting, or how many interruptions, or the sidebars. There was just a lot of conflict between them. and
The
it was
jury
pretty
see it
clear
all.
to us that it was getting out of control there.
Did you think the lawyers performed well or not so well?
I think they did their job. I'm not a lawyer, so I don't really feel that I can really speak to that.
Okay. There was a comment yesterday by one of the attorneys for Terry Sanderson who said, look, the only person who saw this was Mr. Roman, and he was the only witness to this accident, and he said she hit him. Did that matter to you?
I didn't. So we didn't find him to be a credible witness. So there was a lot of.
Why not?
There was a lot of factors. So his color blindness kind of played into that. He said he couldn't clearly tell who was who when they were all scrambled together. He was 50 feet away. He also kind of claimed that he heard a scream and then he turned, meaning he wouldn't have actually seen the collision, which is the same testimony that Eric Christensen gave. And Eric Christensen didn't pretend like he saw it. He said, I didn't see the accident, but I saw the aftermath. And gave all the details around that. And so I think parts of his story were just inserted to kind of bring it together. And it just wasn't credible. And there was a lot of things he said that I didn't find could have been true. The loss of consciousness for 2 minutes and not doing anything. You can't watch somebody lay in the snow unconscious for 2 minutes and not try to get them up.
That's really true.
Christensen was credible.
I believe Christensen is credible.
Credible. Okay. These new ski signs that you saw today,
Yes.
you hadn't seen them until today.
I didn't notice them until today.
I see. Okay. They may have been there.
They may have been there.
They may have been there.
Yes.
And this, do you suspect this is a direct result of this trial?
I would think so, because I think more than ever, we just have to be careful.
Yeah,
And
I heard that.
you don't know what kind of situations you can get yourself into just trying to have a good time out there on the mountain.
Yeah. Would you ever want to do something like this again? Be a juror in a high-profile case with a celebrity that attracts all kinds of attention? Is it something you would relish doing again?
No. I'm hoping this is my one and done. I am really hoping that.
Okay. So, sorry. It's just going straight to the next one. Okay. Well, so that is, I don't know. Was there another juror that spoke? I think I saw a message that the foreman spoke. I did not see that. I just did a quick search for it and I didn't see it. Firefly, I did hear that Ian is going to send Superman a tie to James. And just those of you who are fans of Ian, he is one of the kindest lawyers on YouTube. He actually has been very supportive of me. He sent a bunch of you over here, I think. And him and I have been talking about me potentially going on one of his lives to maybe just talk about my work in Hollywood. I think he mentioned some Canadian laws that are making it harder for him to do his channel, and I would love to support him in any way that I can. If you guys have a link to the male foreman's interview, I just did a quick search for it. I didn't see it. What I did want to show you was the message that Gwyneth Paltrow wrote on her Instagram story that went away very quickly. So it said, I felt that acquiescing to a false claim compromised my integrity. I am pleased with the outcome, and I appreciate all of the hard work of Judge Holmberg and the jury, and thank them for their thoughtfulness in handling this case. So that was her Instagram story that night after the verdict came out. And I thought that was very meaningful because remember, I think when she went through what she went through with Harvey Weinstein, she was very young. She had, I believe, was in connection with Shakespeare in Love, and she won an Oscar for that. Harvey was very, very good with the Oscar rounds, right? I believe she deserved that win, but Harvey is very, very good at doing the Oscar rounds. And she stayed silent, I believe, back then. And I think now, it's got to be like 30, 25 years later, she has decided to take a stance to not be silent anymore. So I am actually really impressed by her that she decided to not settle. And I am glad that the truth came out. Here's at the end of the day, what I think we're seeing from all of these trials is the truth does seem to prevail, right? You can't really hide the truth, right? Like in the Alec Murdaugh trial, it was just crazy that this video from his son, basically, like they said he came back, to testify from the grave. I mean, it was just kind of eerie how he took this video minutes before he died that placed his dad at the crime scene and was able to really convict him of the murder. I think facts always come out. I think that we have seen that from the last few famous trials. There will be more trials coming up. For those of you who are interested, please subscribe. It does mean a lot to me. It does inform the YouTube algorithm. If you hit the likes, if you join my membership, which I don't actually talk about a lot, I'm actually thinking about having like a monthly Zoom up for my members because I don't have that many members right now. So if you guys are interested in that, please consider joining my membership and we can have like a Zoom. I think there are only like 10 of you so far. So I'm happy to do a Zoom where we can all chat and you can ask me questions and we can talk about whatever you want to talk about. I just recorded my Gwyneth Paltrow video, basically summarizing the case. That should be coming out this week. I also just recorded my Victoria Alonso video about what I think is happening behind the scenes. Because remember, she's probably bound by an executive employment contract with Marvel and Disney. So how is it that she has retained one of the most powerful litigators in Hollywood, Patty Glaser, and is basically threatening to sue, right? She's bound by a confidentiality provision. She's probably bound by a non-compete, right? Which is what Disney is saying, that she went and competed. She worked on a project that was competitive, which I think is probably not true because Disney knew about this project. So what is really going on? Are there claims of either gender, race, sexual orientation, or sexual harassment and discrimination here? I think the only way to pierce a confidentiality provision in Hollywood is SB 331, which I talked to you all about in my Try Guys videos, right? That's when you have a sexual discrimination or harassment claim, which was, so in California, they passed a lot of laws in light of the Me Too movement, wanting to protect victims of sexual harassment and sexual assault to be able to come out so that companies and bad actors can't just bind them to a settlement, right? Here's some money and they're basically gagged, right? I think the SB 331 is actually called Silence No More. So this is something that's very dear to my heart because I have worked in domestic violence shelters for over 10 years, and I am very, very passionate about helping women, about helping, you know, victims of domestic violence or just victims in general find their voice. I really am. It's very important for me to be a champion of those who are powerless and voiceless. And so a lot of my videos are centered around that. And I think as my community, you guys seem to respond to that. So let me know if there are other videos you want me to cover. I think I also did just record my why I went to law school video, which is not about a case or anything specific. It's just about my story, kind of in celebration of my 20,000 subscriber milestone that I hit. Let me just look really quickly at your last comments before we end. It is pretty late here. I am a night owl, so this is why I do the late night live streams. I also know that a lot of other attorneys do their live streams, so I don't want to conflict and eat into their time. So let me see. Any other questions? Well, you know, I would love to go on Rob's Friday Night Frenzy. I know he had Bree on. I don't know if you guys know Bree. If you don't know her, you should catch her. She's awesome. I think her channel is called Boss Attorney Bree. She's a young attorney, and I think she's amazing. So try to catch her channel. Trump is, I don't know. I've been really debating if I want to cover that because it's so polarizing, right? I mean, I would love, I might, we'll see what happens, right? Like I have no idea if he's actually going to go to trial. I don't know if Trump is going to, I know he's been indicted. I know he's supposed to show up in court this week. You know, we'll see what happens. And maybe I will cover that if it becomes a trial. Yes, I do agree with that, Firefly. I do know that guys get abused too, as we saw with Johnny Depp, right? So I'm not saying that only I make it generalized, right? I want to be a voice for all of those who are powerless and voiceless, right? Not only women. Generally, historically, it has been women, so that's what I'm going off of. But I did do a video. I don't know if John Morant is the right analogy there, but I always talk about forgiveness and not being too hard on people just because they make mistakes, right? So thank you for that. Teresa, what is that picture behind you? So this here is just a print of a Banksy. If I go up a little bit, you can see, do you see the heart there? That's a very famous Banksy print, right? And then that on the other side is I think it's something my husband bought on Etsy. He's an architect, so it's like a deconstruction of a house. So thank you so much for joining me tonight. You know what I just heard about, because I am kind of track cases. Did you guys hear about this lawyer in Florida that was maybe killed by a plastic surgeon and maybe cut up and put into a bag and carted out of the law office? I mean, I just heard about that, and that is just so heartbreaking because apparently this lawyer is a very sweet man, and he defended one of the defendants that was in a lawsuit against this plastic surgeon. It just sounds horrifying, but it also, reminds us, right, that it's actually pretty hard to get away with murder these days because there are just cameras everywhere, right? I mean, there's the plastic surgeon's truck, I think, was videotaped. He was videotaped going into the building. So it's just like crazy, right? Like it's just that there are just so many. I have to not like read Law and Crime right before bed because I just feel like there's so many awful crimes out there and murders out there that I actually didn't really cover before I started my YouTube channel because I just work on I work on above the line agreements usually. I work on actor agreements, writer agreements, producer agreements, director agreements. I work on films usually. I don't usually work on murders. And so this is something that's kind of new for me, but I love, being able to talk about different areas of the law. And this has been so fun tonight. I mean, I would love to be able to do this, like every Sunday night, let's say, because I can't do it during the day because I have work. Night times, on the weekdays are tough. But thank you so much for joining with me. This is super late. For those of you who are on the West Coast with me, it's really late. My kids are on spring break this week. So, but I'm still working from home. Thank you so much for joining me and for your support. I truly mean this. I love you guys so much. You guys are so supportive and so warm to me. Every other day, sometimes I think about quitting because this is so hard. This journey is, can be such a lonely one. And most people don't understand how hard it is, to think of ideas, to videotape them, to edit them, to comment on them. And it's so funny because Sabrice is my editor and he's here. He is the world's best editor. And he's always, without him, I would not be here. He is my biggest cheerleader and he's always telling me to not give up. And I would have probably given up if not for him. And so, maybe some of you are all over the world and it's just so amazing that we can come together and talk about these things in a compassionate and kind way to be able to talk about human behavior and how we connect to it and how we understand it, or sometimes how we definitely don't understand it, right? Like when there are cases like Alec Murdaugh. But I'm so grateful to you all. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm going to try to have, short videos up every day if I can, just, short snippets of what it's what I do and what Hollywood law is about. And my Gwyneth Paltrow video today was really hit, and which makes me think that people are still interested in this trial. And so that's why I wanted to get on and see you guys. When I see that there are 5 of you waiting for me, I think I need to get on because my family is waiting for me. So I want to get on. So thank you so much. I love you guys so much. And I would do this every night, but I sleep very little. I think I need to sleep more, as Sabrice knows. I'm always sick because I'm never sleeping. Okay, I'm going to say goodnight and I will see you guys soon. And, if there's something that's breaking news, I'll try to maybe do a live during the week, but let's try to do Sunday nights right around this time. I know it's late, maybe 9 or 10 p.m. my time. Okay, thank you so much, and I will talk to you guys. Remember, we were born perfect, and sometimes we forget, and sometimes we look to others for validation, and that's okay, right? We're human beings and we like to know that we are accepted, but we can't just rely on that, right? Because that can be a very difficult journey to realize that we have to get our self-worth from somebody else. So just remember, you know how babies are born completely happy and satisfied because they don't realize anything is wrong with them. And we lose that. We forget because people and society and in our families tell us there are things wrong with us, that we shouldn't run around naked and we shouldn't say this and that. But you know what? I wish we could retain that childhood wonder a little longer, you know? Okay. All right. I will see you guys soon. If I have time during the week, Firefly, we will try to come back on, but during the week. But if not, we'll try to keep Sunday nights as our time to hang out together. Okay. All right. Love you guys. Bye.